Phantom is back for 2022 with 5 tour winning models. Scotty Cameron Phantom putters have been racking up some seriously impressive wins on tour recently, and that's thanks to some new updated designs. Now, Scotty is really focused on kind of tour-proven shapings and getting shapes that he knows the tour players like the look of. Also, these have been pared back a little bit from previous Phantoms, so we see much more simple colourings and stylings. So over the ball, they're definitely a little bit more neutral, which is really going to suit a wider audience of golfers. Now, personally, I think this full set looks absolutely magnificent. So let's go hit all 5 models and see what the differences are. We've got all 5 in actual different neck bends. So the 5, 7, 9 and 11 all come in 2 minimum options for neck shafts. We've just got 1 in the 12, but in the others we've got kind of a face balanced and a toe hang offering, so there really is a model here for everyone depending on your stroke type. So first up, I've got the 12 model. Now, I had the previous version of this in play. My only criticism would be that it didn't have a full line on it before, so I love the updates to this. I think that full line across the putter just really helps in terms of alignment. Now, it's important to note this is the only one in the range that has kept this black face, and that's because of this aluminium build. So having this around the face and in the middle really makes the putter lighter here and gives you more weight on the outside, which is going to really give you that high MOI and stability. Oh, that really feels nice. Now, I have got TrackMan set up here, so over these different putters we can have a look and see how the roll variables change, but I think a lot of this is going to be due to the different sizing, how much kind of stability we've got on those off-centre strikes. Rolling out really nicely, and both of those have been really consistent so far, which is something that's really important when you're testing out putters. You want something that's giving you really consistent speed, because if you can't control that, how are you going to control your pace out on the golf course? Ooh. From this distance, I'd be really happy with the control of this. In terms of roll percentage and how much forward roll we're getting, so that's what percentage of the putt is rolling properly compared to bobbling, that was up at the 85%, so here on winter greens that's really strong. And overall what's impressive is it was exactly the same every time, so you're showing that real consistency there. Now, overall for me, I love the updates here. Obviously it's not massively different in terms of shape and performance. We do have a bit of shape and distance difference here, which I think really helps with visuals in terms of framing the ball, but in terms of performance this has always been really strong, we know that, but I think the visual differences here are gorgeous. This looks really great behind the golf ball. So in terms of this range, I think you would be looking at this if you're someone who wants the most forgiveness. It's going to give you the most forgiveness, especially on off-centre strikes, because of that big shaping and that high MOI performance. But also it's worth noting this only comes in this one neck bend, so that's going to have to suit your stroke. For me, I really like this because I don't have a massive arc, so I feel like it works really well for that. So next up we've got the 11, and you might recognise this because it's already had multiple wins out on tour. Now, there are a few visual changes here. We have got overall kind of similar shaping, but it is significantly smaller. So we've still got these wings on the back, and we do still have this visual line, which I like. But if you're someone who uses kind of the front line to line your club face, you do have that at the front here that contrasts with this black section in the middle. What I actually like about this as well is that this is slightly curved, so the line kind of curves to match a line that matches on your golf ball. So if you're someone who puts a line on your ball, this is going to match in really well with the curvature there. So I definitely say this feels a little bit different. We've got a different material on the face, so I would say it actually feels a little bit softer. The 12 does feel like it comes off a bit quicker, but in terms of that roll percentage, still pretty similar and really high and consistent. Now, because we've got that slightly smaller shaping, you're probably not going to get quite as much stability on off-centre hits as you would with the 12, but then we've got these weightings in the sole that are still going to really drive the MOI up, so you are getting high MOI in a smaller shape, which is definitely something I prefer. A lot of people don't necessarily like that big mallet style. Probably my best putt there so far. It's interesting to look at the roll percentage. It's dropped down kind of 2% with this, so we see, for me personally, I was actually rolling the 12 a little bit better, so that kind of matches in with what I've done in the past in fittings and why that model suits me the most. So next up we have the 9, and I actually have this in both models here. So we've got the 9 and the 9.5. So you can see the difference in neck bend we've got here. The 9 is much more face balanced. So if you're someone who has a straight back and forward stroke, the face is going to match up a lot better to that. Whereas with this short slant neck, this is going to give you much more face rotation. So if you're someone who has a bigger arc on your stroke, it's going to square up nicely to match that. So it's worth testing both types out. We do have both types in 4 of the 5 models, so it's really worth testing both out and seeing which works for you. Now this shape definitely comes more out of tour player feedback. They wanted the kind of styling that we see in some of the other shapes, but they wanted something a little bit smaller and more compact. This is really for someone who likes the look of a blade but wants something a bit more forgiving, because this front section is very traditionally blade-like, and it's almost only this back section that's really more giving it a mallet feel. So it's very good for someone who wants to transition between the two. Now between this and the 11, I would say I actually probably prefer this at address. It just feels like it sits a little bit squarer to me, and it sits a bit flatter, slightly more upright, and I just feel like I can control it really nicely. So it's definitely worth testing them out, because everyone's going to feel a little bit different visually looking at them as well. I don't know if it's to do with the weighting as well. This actually feels a little bit more solid off the face, and like the ball comes off a little bit quicker, and also the roll percentage just jumped back up again. So it's really interesting, because how I feel visually over the ball has related back into how well I'm rolling the golf ball. So it's very interesting to see just how much the visual effect has on your performance when it comes to putting. Yeah, that one feels really nice. I'm really liking that so far. So next up we have the 7, and this is really interesting because it's not really a shape that Scotty has delved into that much before, but we know it's something that's a really popular head out on tour. So you can see that really classic 7 shaping, and you can also see how, if I kind of cover the back up, it's kind of simple and blade-like in this section. I really like that we've got this middle line on the front, which really helps in terms of alignment, and then also these 2 lines here that frame the golf ball. That feels really nice. It's quite interesting to see some of those more classic shapes in this range, because I think at first when Phantom came out, people thought it was quite wacky and out there, but I really like the fact that they've kept that technology that makes it perform so well in terms of performance and forgiveness, but also kind of simplified it and made it more classic, so it appeals to kind of both types of people, like the kind who want the tech and the kind that want that kind of classic Scotty looking putter. Typically I would never pick this up off the shelf in terms of this shape if I was going in to look for a putter. I am kind of one of those people who sticks to the shape I like, but I'm actually really impressed with the way it's performing. I really like the data. That one had the best roll percentage so far, so in terms of consistency for pace, this is probably going to be the best for me so far. I think it's quite interesting because it's quite easy to think, oh, I'll get the biggest putter because it's giving me the most forgiveness, but also there is kind of that opposite side where if you go to a slightly smaller model, it kind of makes you narrow in and hit the centre more, because you know you've got to be more precise. So I think there's kind of 2 ways of looking at it, and definitely so far this is performing really strongly. So last up in this range we've got the 5, and this actually comes in 3 different neck offerings. So it's going to give you the most versatility in terms of matching a head up with the right shaft and getting it to match up with your stroke. Now this is really popular on tour due to that smaller, more compact styling. So it's going to be interesting to see how it performs in terms of that MOI as well. Now I would typically never go for a putter this small in head shape, but it sits so good behind the golf ball and it swings really nicely. It's actually really interesting because I feel like I'm getting more consistent as the putter gets smaller almost. It's like I have a little bit more control of it. really good in terms of roll percentage. That was up at the 85% again. But what I really like about this is how we have this line this way for alignment, but then the contrast of the colour of the club face that gives you kind of that parallel line to it. So in terms of alignment, I really like this. So in terms of pace, all these perform pretty strong, to be honest, and I'd be really happy with them all. But let's go and hit some shorter putts and see how we do in terms of alignment for that hole and out, which is definitely really crucial. So when it comes to putting, 90% of the start line, so the direction of where your ball travels, comes down to how well the face is pointing at the hole. So ultimately, if you're buying a putter that you can't aim, it's really not going to be helping you out on the greens. So in terms of short putting, alignment is really key. So I just want to test the different models out and see how well they perform on that front. And really I'm looking for something that I just feel is really easy to aim at the hole. So even on a bad day, you're going to be pointing somewhere in the right direction. So first up, I've got the 12, and I have to say I really love this new line option, and it really stands out really well against that black aluminium finish. Pretty consistent in terms of start line there. So it's good to know that my visual feedback of seeing the line and thinking that's going to work for me matches what actually happens when I go and use that putter. So with the 11, this is going to be interesting because for me, I do think I need something on the top line. So we're going to find out if that's true or not, and if I can line this up just as well, even though the line doesn't go all the way to the front of the putter. Now I can feel that the neck bend on this is a bit different, and it's not kind of matching up to my stroke quite as much as I want, so that's going to play a little bit of a factor into this too. So I think it's important when you check this out and you're testing your alignment that you make sure you're doing it with a putter with the right neck bend, because if you're not, the face is going to match up differently and it's going to affect your stroke. So you really want to make sure you're testing these all out with kind of the same neck bend option if possible. So visually the 9 is very similar to the last one, it's just a little bit smaller. I actually think it's interesting how having such a different colour visually this way to the contrast of the back on the back really lets you see how well the face is kind of either open or shut, which makes it alignment a lot easier. So people sometimes only think about the line this way on a ball, but having the face pointing the right way is obviously perpendicular to that line too, so it's really key. These Phantoms are obviously working well. So I almost think this 7 is like the perfect balance of both worlds, because you've got that visual colour difference on the top, you've got these 2 lines that frame the ball, which I really like for getting the ball in the centre of the putter, and you've also got this line on the top line, so you kind of really have the best of both worlds in this model. I think that really would be a top contender for me so far, which is definitely completely different to what I would have thought when I first picked these up. Right, last up 5. I just love the shaping of this. This swings so nicely and it feels so forgiving for the size of the club. You can see why this is so popular on tour, because it just feels so forgiving but just looks so visually nice and very compact. So I've hit 15 putts there and I've only missed 1, which is definitely quite unusual, but I definitely felt like the kind of simplicity of the colours here and the way we've got really strong top lines throughout this set makes these really easy to line up. And to be honest, I've been really impressed with all these models, but I think my preference would probably lie with one where we do have that line at the front. In conclusion, I think Scotty has absolutely nailed it here. All 5 of these models look gorgeous behind the golf ball, but they also have a really kind of simple and classic styling, which is completely different to the kind of high MOI and tech story that we've got here as well. All of these sit fantastic behind the golf ball, they just sit so square, and the alignment features are fantastic, which for most club golfers is going to be really key. overall, throughout the set, I really loved the performance in terms of roll quality, which is really going to help for that pace putting. But it's quite surprising how I actually really liked the smaller head models, and I can really see how kind of the 5 and the 7 are so popular on tour. And I think visually, sometimes having a slightly smaller putter kind of makes you putt a little bit better because you're narrowing in on that kind of sweet spot. I think it's great that we've got multiple neck bend options in all of these, so you can really find a head and a shaft type that suit your stroke and really dial them in. So I'd be saying go out, find the right bend first, and then check out all the different alignment options and see which works best for you.